Welcome to Crazy Canuck Truckin'. Appreciate everybody coming back. I don't usually start this part, but Size Matters is having a little issue with internet today, so hopefully she can get on a bit later. And in the meantime, I will have VIP working with me. So how you doing, VIP? How are things going?
I'm doing great today. Thank you for asking, Dave. Just a little rough around the edges, but nothing we can't manage. How about
Yeah, life is always fun and challenging. So as our social media person, VIP, what do people need to do when they watch and listen to our podcast?
Well, they can like and subscribe to the videos, leave comments to interact with us because we really appreciate the feedback and info so that we can keep the conversation going with you guys and understand what you as a community would like to see from us as your podcast. So yeah, we'd really
That's
appreciate it.
good. We've had a couple of comments lately with the episode with Jessica Bachman. People were really interested in her and loved her story, and young lady, very going very hard, and so that's pretty cool. So, do you have any idea who we have on today, VIP? Who I'm going to introduce here soon?
I have a little bit of a guess. I know her name, but I haven't heard her story yet. So I'm very interested to hear the rest of the tale because I know from what I'm seeing visually, I can't believe my eyes.
Yeah, yeah. So we are going to have we have a young lady on with us. Kelsey Banks is her name. She's from Eastern Ontario. She's an agronomist, and she is a cancer survivor, and she is an extremely driven young lady that I have followed on Twitter for a number of years, and it's been interesting following her journey. And we are going to hear about that today because she has had some interesting challenges to deal with. So, Kelsey, welcome to our program and thank you for coming on with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this chat.
So, where should we start? Well, let's start here. You grew up in Eastern Ontario?
Yeah, so well, if we're really starting right from the beginning.
Yeah, let's go right back to the beginning.
Okay. So at the time when I was actually born in London, Ontario, which kind of throws some people off, which is southwestern Ontario.
Yeah.
And my dad at the time was had kind of just started his career in ag, and he was working for OMAFRA, Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. And then I think I was maybe a year old, and we ended up moving to I guess it would be East Central Ontario, so to Sterling, which is kind of near Belleville, for those of your listeners from Ontario, and that might know that area. And then we had kind of built a house there, my family had, and then at this point I had I had my middle brother born, and then after that we moved to Kemptville, where I grew up for the most part of my life at the age of 2, and the last of my brothers was born, and then so I grew up here. I love Eastern Ontario. I think I am one of the most obsessed people with Eastern Ontario. I see so much opportunity in this part of Ontario, and we kind of get forgotten about sometimes in the agriculture world, just because we're, a lot of people, I've had this conversation myself where they're, as I'm sure you've been trucking down the road on the 401, and you hit Kingston and you're like, oh, I must be in Eastern Ontario. Then it's like, well, you are, but keep going another hour and a half, and then you'll hit Kemptville.
Yeah. Yeah, and you liked it so much you decided to go to the prairies for a year or so, didn't you?
Yeah, I know. Well, I was so we have a farm. The farm I grew up on is in Kempville. Well, actually it's in this little metropolis called Hexton, which is about 10 minutes away from Kempville. But I ended up we also have another farm an hour north of Toronto in Orangeville, near Orangeville, and it's in the township of Amaranth, if people know that area. But
Okay.
yeah, so on that farm, it was originally a cow calf Black Angus farm. That's what my grandpa had on that farm and was very proud of and everything. And of course, he wanted to keep it going and everything. And I wanted to farm. And I thought to myself, well, you know what? I have the opportunity to go to, Midwestern Ontario and learn more because I'd heard so many, cool things that they were doing in agriculture and everything. And I thought, you know what? I might as well go. So I thought, well, I'm gonna go to the farm and farm part time and then also um, work full time as at the time in marketing and agronomy, and then yeah, and then I ended up going out west for a year. I had succession kind of came to a bit of a hold, and I thought to myself, well, I have nothing holding me back, why not go out west?
Yeah.
So I decided on Saskatchewan, and a lot of people were quite surprised I didn't choose Alberta. Um,
I see you.
uh,
I hear you pronounced it right. They're
yes,
very particular about that.
they are. That's
Yeah.
why I'm doing it correctly. And I make sure to correct people here when they say Saskatchewan. I'm like, no, it's
Yeah. No,
Saskatchewan because you always
Saskatchewan. Yeah.
win in Saskatchewan, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is. So I started working out there as a full-time agronomist. So it wasn't like half marketing; it was fully agronomy. And first of all, I fell absolutely in love with the prairies. It's amazing. It's gorgeous. I don't even I don't even have words to describe how amazing it was. And I had really learned a lot there in 1 year and met some fantastic people, had some really great experiences, and then succession suddenly started continuing again back home. So I moved back home and continued my agronomy career from there.
So give a shout out to some your Saskatchewan friends.
Okay. Well, so Eddie from McGee Colony. And I would say, oh boy, now you're asking me to go back on names again. Anna Russell, she's
Anna
awesome.
Russell.
And there's a lot. Oh my
You
goodness.
must have spoken with Leslie at some time. Leslie Kelly. Did
Yes,
you?
actually,
Yeah.
yeah. So she was more,
She's further east from where you were.
yeah, because I was in Rosetown,
Yep.
so I was about an hour, 10 minutes southwest of Saskatoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was great.
You're
I
close to
loved it.
Meg's.
Yes, actually. So her and I hung out a couple of times and everything. So it was
Yeah.
pretty cool. You have to
Yeah.
love Twitter because I was connected to a few people through social media and met them, and then thought it was like an awesome time to get to meet them in person.
Yeah. No, I think that was right around the time I started following you was when you were out in Saskatchewan because I don't know, I don't just follow everybody I see, but I saw you're an agronomist and you come from Eastern Ontario, so then that kind of piqued my interest. Like, oh, and then I looked and oh, Kempville. Oh, I know Kempville, but I didn't tell you about that connection until uh, a month or two ago. But
Yeah.
I, some of my relatives and North Gore Grains and stuff. So I don't know, a month and a half ago, I tweeted you a picture of me at North Gore Grains or a picture of their sign. And it's like, hey, and you came by to say hi. So that was really cool to meet you in person finally.
Well, I was 15 minutes away. I can't say no.
Yeah. And then what really solidified following you for me was a huge event that came up, I think, after you left Saskatchewan, right?
It happened about 2 years after, yeah.
Yeah. So why don't you tell the listeners what I'm talking about here?
So on January 23rd, 2020, I was diagnosed with a grade 2 astrocytoma, which is a form of a brain tumor that is cancerous. And at the time, I was 26 and was basically involved in absolutely everything I could do, and was kind of living the high life of agriculture and being involved with things. And then in December 2019, I was having seizures at night, and I didn't know that I was having these seizures. I would be so tired the next day, and I couldn't figure out why. And it kept getting worse and worse, and it got to the point where, and sorry, like this is like TMI, but I'm going to say it because I want people to be aware that this could be a symptom that you should get checked out. But I remember waking up some mornings and there'd be blood all over my pillow. And it was because I was biting my tongue during these seizures, and literally biting my tongue so hard that I was bleeding everywhere, like
Wow.
out my mouth.
Wow.
I didn't know what was going on, but I had a roommate at the time, but he lived upstairs and I lived downstairs. So it's not like he would have heard me having a seizure or anything like that. And then during Christmas time, in between Christmas and New Year's, I was staying at my grandparents' house overnight, and my dad was there, and my brothers were there, and everything. And at night, my grandpa was having issues breathing, and it woke my grandmother up. And I was sleeping in the room across from their room, and she heard me gargling and making sounds, and she didn't know what was going on. And she tried to wake me up, and I was laying in bed shaking, having an intense seizure, a major seizure. They called 911, and to be perfectly honest with you, I don't really remember much of that day. When they brought me in and everything, I woke up a couple of times, and I remember seeing an IV in my arm, but didn't know what was going on. And after that, I started to feel a little bit better because they were, I was thinking, okay, this is okay. But they released me thinking that I had pneumonia. And so
Pneumonia.
yeah. So
Wow.
I think what it came down to was they didn't know what was going on, because I had no history of like seizures or anything like that. And then one thing though that the doctor did, and it was great he did this, he referred me to a local ear, nose, and throat specialist. And I thought, what a specialty to have, and I guess I should, go see this person. And at this point I was feeling a little bit better afterwards, but I kind of was like still kind of groggy. And New Year's came around, and I was still not feeling my best, but I didn't drink that night or anything. And I ended up going to see this ear, nose, throat specialist a few days later, and or sorry, I guess a couple of weeks later. And within 1 week, I went to see the specialist, and he was like, okay, I really think that you need to go get an MRI done. So I went, got the MRI done in Guelph, from the time the MRI was done until the time that I got diagnosed was 2 days.
That's fast.
And yeah. So I ended up, I was at the certified crop advisor. Actually, I was about to write my exam. And I was in the kind of workshop where they kind of go over things of what to expect on the exam and that kind of thing in Woodstock. And I didn't have any service in the room or anything like that, the meeting room. And so I didn't, I guess my dad had been trying to call me because the ear, nose, throat specialist, Dr. Riddell, he kept trying to call my dad and saying, you need to get, because they wouldn't tell, he wasn't allowed to tell me like if it
You're
was
over 18.
cancerous or not.
Yeah.
And exactly, I'm over 18. So he just said, you need
Yeah.
to get Kelsey to call me like now. And my dad thankfully knew where I was. And so he called the hotel and told the hotel staff, like, something serious is going on and I want to make sure we get this dealt with. Can you please go get her? So you don't see this in many hotels, but the hotel staff came in and they said, is there a Kelsey Banks here? She needs to talk to her father immediately. So I immediately think something's wrong with him. And I had no idea what was going on. So I went up the stairs, called him, and he said, they won't tell me what's going on, but you need to call Dr. Riddell right now. So I said, okay. So I call him and he said, so I got your MRI back and it looks like you might have a cyst on your brain and there's something there. And I thought, and immediately I was scared because I heard, I know about plants and soil. I don't know about the human body, and I didn't know what to expect. And I called my dad back and I said, so they think that it's a cyst. And sorry, another thing he said, so I made you an appointment with a neurosurgeon. And his name is Dr. Doss, and he's at a hospital in downtown Toronto. But you have to go home now, and you're not allowed to drive there. So I call my dad because I'm in panic mode, and I'm like, well, something seems kind of fishy here, and I don't know what's going on. So I ended up, my dad had just left because he had just retired in the December 2019. So he had just left Midwestern Ontario to go back home to Eastern Ontario. And I called him and said, you need to come back because I don't know what's going on. I could get a nanny or grandpa or a friend to drive me, but I had a gut feeling that I needed like a family member.
You needed your dad.
I needed my dad there. So he came with me. He was actually at Napanee. And if you know kind of geographically where the difference is for that. So he was pretty well like an hour and a half from home kind of thing. Yeah. And turned around and came back because he could sense that something was wrong. So I went in and I'd asked my nurse, one of my best friends is a nurse, and I'd asked her all that night. I asked her a million questions, and I said, so if it's a cyst, what does that mean? Like, do they have to do surgery, or is it like, do they just give you like a shot of something, or what, like a needle kind of thing, or what is it that they do? And she kept telling me, she said, well, they might do surgery, but it depends like what kind of cyst it is and all this kind of thing. So I thought, okay. So, I was trying to go in with just an open mind that maybe they just wanted to check me out. That's kind of what I thought it was. And then I sat down with Dr. Doss and my dad, and Dr. Doss came in, and I still remember he came in and he grabbed my hands and he said, I hope you don't mind if I hold your hands while I tell you this. And I said, okay. And I was confused. And he said, so you seem like a very straightforward kind of girl. woman. And I just want to tell you that now that I will need to inform you, sorry, that you have cancer. And I went and I was just shocked. Like, I didn't cry at first. I didn't move. I just was in pure shock. Like, to hear that, like, at 26 years old, like, I have cancer, like just your world changes. So so then I thought, and my dad, of course, was, he tells me now that while I was being told this, he was looking at me the whole time, because he was just, how can how he can't protect me from that. So so we so then he's explaining, he says, the good news is that we think we caught it pretty early on, but I'm going to have to do a biopsy to confirm, like, a biopsy of the tumor, because it's a brain tumor, once I'm done surgery. But at the moment, like, it doesn't look like it's a glioblastoma, which is kind of the worst one that you can get. Grade. And he said, so I really think that you should, that we'll just try and keep an eye on things, and I'm sure it'll, and we'll set you up for surgery and all this. And it was just like, and he and then one thing he said that just, so I'm very independent, and what absolutely took me out was, he said, and you're sorry, you're no longer going to be allowed to drive. I'm taking your license away until you are healed and you are approved by an oncologist that you are able to drive. And I started bawling. And he said, well, I'm sure, and now we can look back, and I try and look at this and try and laugh at it, because now it's in the past. But he said, well, I'm sure there's public transportation in Drayton, which is where I was living, which, by the way, is a four-corner town. So I ended up, all within 24 hours, ended up being diagnosed with cancer, being told that I was no longer allowed to work and had to go on disability leave. And thankfully, the company I was with at the time was really great about absolutely everything. I had my license taken away, and that sounds minor, maybe to some, but when you live in rural anywhere, you need a license to drive. You need to go places, right? And this was before COVID, right? So at the time, I thought, well, maybe some of my Eastern Ontario friends and stuff will be able to come around and stuff. And at the time, my neurosurgeon, just from the MRI, I said, well, how long will I be out for? And remember, I'm 26 at the time and think I can conquer the absolute big world of everything. And he said, well, if I can get the tumor out just by surgery, you'll probably be back to work in June. So I was like,
5 months.
No biggie. I can handle that. Well, so I ended up moving back to Eastern Ontario at that time, because I couldn't drive anywhere, and I needed my dad to take care of me, because I was still, even though I hadn't had surgery yet, like, just the mental and emotional pressure, and just, it's hard, like, to hear that, and now I'm getting back into it as COVID, I guess, is getting a little bit better in my part of Ontario, at least. But I used to go to the gym like 4 to 5 times a week. I ate pretty healthy. just to be diagnosed with cancer, like, and you're trying to do all these right things. And yet, in my mind, I'm thinking, what did I do wrong? So I ended up moving back to Eastern Ontario, and and then February 18th, I ended up having brain surgery done in Toronto. And my family, we have family there that live downtown Toronto, very close to the hospital. And actually, I guess she'd be like my second cousin, like once removed, pretty extended family. But she actually leads the ER department at St. Mike's Hospital, which is where I had the surgery done. And she ended up, and thankfully, like, I had the surgery done. And to be honest, I wasn't nervous about going into the surgery, which sounds so odd to some people. But in my mind, I honestly, truly believed that, well, they'll just get out the tumor, and I just got to watch some Netflix for the next couple months, go on some walks, and I'm sure I'll be fine.
And that's exactly what happened, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. Oh, so so then I ended up having I guess, a semi-successful surgery, but they were only able to partially remove the tumor. They weren't able to remove the whole thing. And it was because it was sitting on two important places: your memory and your speech. So he didn't want to kind of fool around in that area, which I'm very blessed he didn't, because I could have risked that I either wouldn't be able to talk, and anyone that knows me knows that I talk a lot. So it'd be tough. And my memory wise, that's like, everything, like, that would, I can't even imagine losing my whole memory. So he said to me when I woke up, he came to check in on me, and he said, I said, okay, did you get it? I think he told me this after. He said, the first thing I asked him when he asked me how I was doing, I said, I'm laying there as I have like, bandages all over my head and everything. I said, well, I'm fine, but so can I go back to work soon? Can I drive soon?
Just like, there's a magic pill, I'm good to go now.
Exactly. Like, I thought, well, I don't know anything about brain cancer, and and people told me, don't go on Google. And anyways, so I didn't. But I ended up though. So we go back east after I'm starting to recover, but before we go back east, I end up having a seizure while recovering. And it was another, like, it wasn't a big one, but it was still scary enough that my dad didn't know what to do. My aunt didn't know what to do. So they said, let's just take her to the hospital just in case, get her checked out. Like, I had surgery literally like 2 days before. So it makes sense. So they took me in. And they said, yeah, it's pretty normal, but we're going to have to start giving you anti-seizure pills that you have to take twice a day. And I kind of was like, okay, so it's temporary, because again, I'm just thinking, well, I'm going to be back to work in June, I'm sure. So I ended up, they like recovering and everything, like pretty well. But then COVID hit in March, and we all heard about it on the news and everything. I was supposed to start, I had gone in for, well, I guess I should back up a little bit. So I ended up, after my surgery, they said, Dr. Doss said, I did my best. I got as much of it as I could. However, I needed, though, like, there's still some there, and we need to get that out. So I have you registered to go to Sunnybrook Hospital, which is downtown Toronto as well. And you'll be able to meet with a radiation oncologist and a chemotherapy oncologist. And I remember thinking, like, okay, like, I was just kind of uneasy, but I wasn't scared, like super scared yet. And then what really got me was I walk into the cancer center for the first time, and at Sunnybrook to meet these oncologists, and I just start crying and sobbing. Like, you see, like, you walk in and you see all these people who are completely bald, or they look completely exhausted, and and some of them look like they just don't have any hope. And as a very positive person, that's very hard for me to see. It's hard for anyone to see. So I start crying and I just couldn't stop. Like, I was looking around and I just couldn't believe the amount of people that were in there. And everyone was just completely going, like, everyone's going through their own cancer journeys. Yet all of us, we were all scared of our, like, you might die. Like, that's what the vibe of the room was. And I remember talking to these two oncologists, and they ended up helping me and kind of settle down a little bit. And they said, well, your tumor, although it is cancerous, just from what we're looking at and from an initial biopsy, it looks like it's an oleodendroglioma, which is, and it's a low grade. So, we'll be able to do, they just, don't get me wrong, they're amazing oncologists, but I just remember them kind of spitting it out as if it's like, okay, yeah, you're buying broccoli and you're buying carrots at the store kind of thing. Like, and I was thinking, like, this is my life, like, and it kind of all hit me. And they were like, well, we'll do 30 rounds of radiation and we'll do 6 rounds of chemo, and it'll be all good and all this. And I was just kind of like, you're telling me that, like, I have to go through all these treatments and everything. And I was like, so, and then I told them, I said, well, what does this mean? Like, I assume work wise, because what I was really worried about too was that I am in general, like, I am known to be a very helpful person. I like to help people. Like, I wanted to, and I had made, in my mind, I had made commitments to help farmers like with my job. And I thought, you know what? And I felt terrible. I talked to these farmers and they were like texting me, and I remember texting them back and being like, I couldn't text them back. Like, it killed me too. That's why I ended up putting it on social media, because it was easier to put it on social media and write one message than it was to write back to them, because I couldn't bear the thought of me letting people down, because that hurt more than knowing I had cancer.
Wow.
So so I ended up, and then on top of that, like, as like a side note, I ended up, because they had stapled my scar, or, well, I guess stapled the incision. Yeah, kind of thing. And one of the staples ended up being caught in the back of my ear. And they had to freeze my ear, which, by the way, there's not much fat there to be able to freeze. So that kind of hurt a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And I was holding my dad. We kind of laugh about it, because you have to laugh in life, and you have to look back and kind of see, like, some of the funny things, right? And one of those things was this, and it took three resident doctors to get it out, because it was, like, so stuck and everything. But meanwhile, my dad's, like, holding my hand, looking away, because he doesn't want to see it. But anyways, so yeah, and then And then because of COVID hitting in March, I was supposed to start radiation in April. And, the whole big plan was that Dad and I would stay downtown Toronto at at his aunt and uncle's place kind of thing. And I'd go into the Kansas Sunnybrook from there every day for radiation and treatment. And I ended up though saying to Dad, we sat down one day, and at that point, I'd been in Eastern Ontario again for a few months, and I had kind of thought to myself, or a couple months, and I thought, like, you start to realize like what you're grateful for. And I thought, I am so grateful to be back in Eastern Ontario. Like I don't get me wrong. I'm glad that I spent the time I did in Western Ontario. I'm glad I spent the time I did in Saskatchewan. But home is home, and life is only so long. So you need to take those times and those things that make you happy. And one of those was being in the East again. So Dad and I talked it over, and because of COVID and everything, it didn't make sense. Why would we go to Toronto and stay with people, and higher risk and everything of being there? So of COVID and everything. So I moved everything to Ottawa, and ended up again, was supposed to have my neurosurgeon. I told him, I said, I want to move everything to Ottawa, and he had a contact in Ottawa, so he was able to move me over. The only issue was Ottawa called me and said, by the way, we're not able to start your radiation because of COVID until later, and we don't know when that'll be. And I was pretty upset about that, because I just wanted to get this done with, like get the treatment done. And so I ended up going into sorry, I should back up a little bit. And then one day I got a phone call and this was probably in, I think it was April. I think I got it end of April. I got a phone call, and it was from my now oncologist, chemo oncologist, Dr. Nicholas. And I believe that this man was brought into my life because he was able to stand, really like help me get through a lot of things. Not just because of his expertise, he's just overall a super awesome, kind, and amazing oncologist. And so he called me, and he actually normally works with chemo oncology. And he called and said, I know that your radiation has been delayed. However, the chemo is all like oral chemo, so by pills. So if you want, there's, and he talked about some data behind that. It could still work by doing chemo and then radiation, but the original plan was doing radiation then chemo. And I said, well, I would really rather do radiation than chemo, because if that's a plan that's been put together and that's been proven, to work kind of thing too, like I'd rather stick to that if possible. And he said, well, give me a few days. Well, within like a day, I got a phone call back, and they said, so your first radiation treatment, your radiation is going to begin on June 1st. So I only had to wait a month, and then I got to begin. And that was, and that, just being able to have someone like Dr. Nicholas that I could email back and forth with and say, like, I'd rather this, or like having his guidance of getting through working through it all, I was amazed. So radiation came along, and I started it. And, to be honest, like, out of radiation and chemo in this situation, at least, and everyone's body is differently, so everyone has different experiences. Radiation, I wasn't a fan of. Not that I was a fan of any of it, but I didn't like the side effects of radiation. And the main reason was because the side effects lasted longer. like the fatigue, for example. One thing too, my hair is growing back a lot better now, but you can see it's shorter over here. Sorry to those listening that you can't
Yeah.
see this, but I lost like
It's about
half a head.
2/3 of the length
Yeah,
right
so I
now.
lost so I lost about half of my head of hair from the radiation. And you know, I still remember going for a walk before starting with my dad, and I said, and he asked me, he said, what are you nervous about anything or with radiation or anything like that? And I said, yeah, losing my hair. He thought I was like crazy for thinking that, but
No.
I just it's part of who I am. It's I like how I'm just so used to my habit of straightening my hair in the morning, or it's just part of what I do and who I am, I guess. So that was tough, but I was doing pretty well, though, throughout it. And one of the best things I did, though, to stay positive, for not just myself, but one thing I noticed was that, and I don't know, I'm a bit of a people reader. Sometimes I like to see why people are, look angry or something. Um, and I noticed that the team I had for the radiation team I had, they always had, they always just looked, it wasn't like a happy look. Like it was just, they looked kind of meh, I guess. It's just
Somber.
yeah, like somber. That's a better word than meh.
Yeah.
So I put together this playlist, and they would let me play my music as loud as I wanted, and they could hear some of it too. And it would be different things, like everything from Christina Aguilera to Backstreet Boys to like Mariah Carey. There'd be some country music on there too. Um I can't remember the song name right now, but I still remember this one radiation tech that he was always there whenever I was there, and he came up to me and was taking, because they put like a mask over your face so you can't move during radiation, and he was taking the
Yeah.
mask off, and he was singing the songs along with me. That, and the song playing was "That's What Makes You Beautiful."
Nice.
I still remember that, but
Yeah.
so I wanted that, though, like not just for them, to make them smile and make them happy, but also I really wanted, I needed that too, like. And there's this one song, and I can't remember who the artist is, but it's called War Paint. And a good friend of mine had sent that to me, and I had heard it before, but I hadn't heard it in a while. And I started crying when I heard that song, because it's all about being there for you, and basically trying to do everything they can to help me get through it all. So that was good. That was good once it was finished, but kind of in between, like, well, not even in between, but during radiation and timing, when it was all happening and stuff, I was like, I was still getting like minor seizures here and there. And every time I had a seizure, it delayed me getting my license back for another 6 months. That's the rules in Ontario, at least.
Yeah.
So every time I had a seizure, I went into the hospital and I'd be sobbing, and they always asked me, they said, like, is something, like, are you in pain or something? And I said, no, actually, it's because I don't want to lose my license again. Like, that's how important this was to me.
Yeah.
So I ended up talking to my talking to Dr. Nicholas again. And he said that he was that I'd be ready to start chemo. I had an MRI kind of in between to see if I was ready to start chemo enough. So I did on September 7th, I believe it was. And I did 6 rounds. And one round lasts about, you're on pills for 3 weeks, chemotherapy pills for 3 weeks. and then you have 5 weeks off, and that's one round. So I finished my last chemo pill, and last treatment day is March 14th, 2021. And yeah, so I had gotten an MRI, I think it was a couple months previously, and and they said that it was actually starting to shrink. And
Nice.
I was really, and that just gave me motivation. I was like, okay, I just have to like get through these next few months and go. And you know, with the great knowledge and help and support of Dr. Nicholas and friends and family, and literally I feel like all of agriculture on social media, I was able to, I would wake up every day and say, okay, I can do this. So I was, yeah, I ended up, think like March 14th came around and I had like a pill sorter, and I remember taking it and going like this and holding it upside down and just dropping it.
Mic drop.
Yeah. Pill drop. Done.
Pill drop.
Yeah.
There is something that I have two things. One, you know, the fact that you make up a playlist, not just for you, but for the people in radiation. I mean, that you are not a selfish person. You are looking to try and be a help, like you said, and you can feel the energy off of other people. And I don't know how many people can or would do that. To you're in a potentially life threatening, or you are in a life threatening situation, and you're thinking about the others and thinking what you can do to help them and bring their spirits up. That, I mean, Kelsey, that wow, that's amazing. And then the one thing I remember you putting it on social media that you had brain cancer, and that is not ever pleasant news to hear. And you had mentioned as well that you have done everything right, and that's the thing, you know. Like, for somebody that didn't know you, but I saw stuff that you're doing on social media, I instinctively knew that you're taking care of yourself as best as you can. You're doing all the right things. You're smart. You've put yourself through school. You've done all these things, and then to get brain cancer, you know, that makes it hurt worse. You know, if you have somebody that's not looking after themselves, and they get something comes along, sometimes you can be a little less caring. Maybe, you know, you look at well, you know, if you walk along a tightrope enough times, you're going to fall off, you know, but you're not walking that tightrope. You're doing everything that's right. And then you come down with brain cancer. And one thing I remembered on social media, and it's one expression, one hashtag you always used. What's that hashtag?
Yeah. Kick Bob to the curb.
Kick Bob to the curb. That endeared me more to you than just about anything else, because that hashtag, kick Bob to the curb, and you explained that, you know, that you're not going to let this beat you. You're going to do what you can to survive and to thrive and to do all this stuff. And there's so much wrapped up in that kick Bob to the curb. And I was just like, oh man, that's awesome. And I don't know if I don't remember how much we communicated about it or anything, but I know you've always been in my prayers, Kelsey.
Oh, well,
And
thank you.
then, this is the amazing thing with social media, is that we can get updates once in a while. And it was really cool to finally meet you a couple months ago, or a month ago, whatever it was. And just an amazing story. You have such a warrior spirit about you, and such a you're not going to take anything lying down, you know. And
Well, I should say I for sure had like some really poor days kind of thing, and whether it was like getting a seizure or usually like the day before like I would start chemo again, I knew that it was going to get progressively worse.
yeah,
I was going to feel progressively worse with
yeah,
every treatment. And I would, usually have kind of a dull day where I just needed like to do something. And I one thing that really helped me get through it though, to be honest, the most thing was that, so my dad had retired, but he was working on some Ontario soil and crop on farm projects, so basically like soil health projects, and
yeah,
he was working with 5 farms in Eastern Ontario, and he would bring me on those trips even though I was so sick, and I was tired, and I barely had energy to do anything. But he would bring me because he knew that that my happy place was being in a field.
yeah,
And one thing he did for me that always um I'll forever be grateful for was, because it was a project and it was research, we're not, and also compaction, we don't like compaction. So he would bring me like a lawn chair, and at every point where he needed to get data, he would set up my lawn chair, and then I'd sit in the lawn chair, and then he would do whatever tests he needed to do. And the farmers too, like they would always like help out. They'd ask questions, and they'd come and visit from afar or something like that. And you know I I'll be forever grateful for that, because it really did make me see, like, what, I'm sick, but that's right now, but I can get through this. I just need to keep going and doing my best, and remember to take my pills on time.
you're I know when I did meet you and you talked about you're you're very conscious of what is supposed to be good for you, and what you need to do for what you eat and how you look after yourself. And that's so critical, like you see some people sometimes that have something going on, and they're, well, we'll let that slide this time, or we'll, you know but you don't seem to make any exceptions for that. You are just you're taking what the doctors are telling you, and you are working with that all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and sticking to that.
Yeah, I would say that there's certain things that I'm not able to have now, and one of them, for example, is caffeine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
I
remember,
see
because we offered you a
VIPs.
coffee. We offered you a coffee, and you're like, no, I can't.
I know I'm only allowed decaf, but
Yeah,
the caffeine-free life, it's okay. But the way I see it though, I like there's if out of everything, if the only thing is that I'm not allowed to have anymore is caffeine, and if I but I have my license back now, and I'm driving around a lot.
yeah,
And like if caffeine is the worst part and I got to take pills every day, I can live with that.
Yeah. So we managed to get Size Matters in here for a minute or two as we're getting ready to close down. We have something else to get to, but Bridget, Size Matters, welcome. And really good to see you. Meet Kelsey Banks. And do you have any thoughts or questions you want to ask? There we go.
I wish I did. All I have is an apology that I'm sorry that everything today seems to have gone nuts. But hey, you know what? I got Wi-Fi. I got internet. I can operate now. So thank you for understanding that. I'm back up and operating it. Kelsey, I'm looking forward to hearing the discussion you guys had.
Oh, well, thank you. It's nice to meet you in person.
Good to see you too.
Size Matters is somebody, Kelsey, that is well worth following.
Crazy is what you're looking for.
No, that's me. Hey, that's me. She's such an example herself. So, thank you very much. Thank you very much. VIP, you want to remind everybody what we need to do here?
Thanks, Dave. If you like, subscribe, or at least leave a comment for us. It gives us some feedback, and YouTube, it tells them that you like our stuff and that you're into our community. So leave the comments if you can and show some support so we can support you more. Thank you, guys.
Do you mind if I add one more thing?
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
So the Canadian, the Brain Tumor Foundation of Canada is actually running a fundraiser right now called Hats for Hope. And you can go online and you can order it's a toque. It has a little puffy fluff ball at the top of it. And it's gray and it says Hats for Hope. And you can get it in English or en français. And
Oui.
yeah, so anyways, if you're interested in learning more about brain tumors or anything like that, feel free to follow me as well. I don't mind answering questions, and as you can tell, I'm pretty open about my experience. So
yeah, absolutely. We will put that in the show notes for the Canadian Brain Cancer, and we'll have ways, and VIP will promote that as well. And we'll try to. I know. I'll be trying to help out there. So, you want to close us out, Size Matters?
Folks, as always, we are thrilled that you could be here with us today. So thank you for listening. Please do comment, follow Kelsey, and support the fundraiser that's going on. Who can't use a new toque?
Yeah. Thank you all.